Can Minsitthar actually counter Paquito? Because not gonna lie, Paquito is incredibly strong, and a lot of players struggle to deal with him. But don't worry, because in this video I'll show you exactly how to play against the Paquito. And by the way, they also have Johnson, a hero that many players consider to be one of Minsithar's counters. Alright, right from the start, it's important to buy Dagger for the extra 15 physical attack. You see, Paquito clears waves really fast, and most Paquito players will use that advantage to cut the lane early. So don't go straight to your lane. Instead, you can try waiting in this bush, or right here in this one. The goal here is to poke Paquito before he even reaches the minion waves, because Minsitthar can actually go toe-to-toe with Paquito, even at level 1, all thanks to his passive. But personally, I prefer waiting here because it baits Paquito into going deeper. That's exactly what we want, especially if your jungler and teammates are starting on this side. It gives you a much better chance to punish Paquito, and it's even better if you let Paquito use his skills on the minions first before you reveal yourself. However, since Paquito can clear the wave so fast, so don't give him too much time. Approach him right away, and if your skill 2 is no longer hitting him, just simply cancel it so the cooldown starts immediately. As you can see, Paquito is having a hard time clearing the wave, which gives us more chances to poke him. Although we weren't able to take him down, we still managed to force his flicker, which is already a huge win. It means he'll have fewer escape options in the next skirmish, and we have to commend Selena for keeping an eye on Paquito. That's exactly how you capitalize in situations where the enemy already burned their crucial battle spells. And if you're the EXP laner, getting taken down this early, plus already wasting your flicker, is really a bad news for your team. It usually means you'll be late to the first turtle fight, putting your team at a disadvantage. So here's a tip: if you're on the enemy team in this situation, it's better to give up the first turtle. Trying to contest it when your EXP laner can't make it on time will only put your team even further behind. And here, Paquito even tries to trade, which was a nice attempt. But since he still didn't have flicker, he wasn't able to secure the takedown. But it's still too early to say if we're going to win this game. Remember, they still have Johnson, and one good drive and engage from him can easily change the whole game. You see, Minsitthar doesn't have much mobility, and he also has no CC immunity. So if the Johnson player is good, it's much easier for him to find and catch the king. So technically speaking, Johnson does pretty well against Minsitthar. But don't worry, I will give you tips on how to deal against him. And if you've probably noticed, one of the biggest tips against Johnson is simply having good map awareness and knowing the right time to clear your minions. Because remember, Johnson can't just appear out of nowhere like he has a teleport skill. He still needs to drive across the map, avoid walls, and find the right angle. And here's the important thing: don't let Johnson be the one hunting you. You should be the one looking to get hit by him instead, because it can become a free setup for your team to punish them. But remember, only do this if you're confident that you won't get bursted down. But since we're already ahead in levels because of our early game advantage, you can see that we can play more confidently here. Look, we're already level 9 at this point, but that confidence almost got us taken down here. That's why it's still important to respect your enemies and avoid playing too reckless. And even though we didn't get taken down, it still gave them the chance to gain some control, especially here in our bottom lane. But they got a little too greedy and stayed too long trying to take our tower. They were also too confident, even throwing some emotes, thinking we were backing off. But for those who don't know me yet, I'm Checkmate. And overconfidence like this is something we love to punish. Now, what a lot of players don't realize is that Minsithar's second skill reduces damage taken from the front. That's why you should think twice before chasing even a low HP Minsitthar. So if you're the one using the king, stay relaxed and just focused on triggering your passive. Now, Paquito also has a damage reduction mechanic, but here's the catch: he only gets it after casting an enhanced skill. And once he's trapped inside King's Calling, building passive stacks becomes a problem since skill 1 is the only ability he can use at this point. So technically, Paquito becomes squishier and a lot easier to deal with. Meanwhile, if you check the minimap, Eudora is slowly making her way over here. And yes, I have to say we had teammates with great game sense in this game, which is pretty rare to find in solo ranked. Just watch how Selena repositions herself. She knows exactly where to throw her arrows. She's positioning and aiming from angles where the arrow enters the enemy's blind spot on their screen, making it much harder to dodge. And speaking of solo ranked, our jungler went AFK here, while our gold lane seemed to be struggling in the top lane. Good thing our Selena successfully took down Eudora. And this Eudora had just respawned, but unfortunately for her, we were already waiting in the bush. You see, heroes with limited mobility, like Eudora, are much easier to predict. Now, one of the most important things you need to master when using the king is patience, especially when you're up against a Paquito. Just keep a close eye on the minimap, and if Paquito is still missing, just simply don't reveal your position. It doesn't matter how long you have to wait. That's one of the biggest lessons you need to learn when playing Minsitthar. He's not the type of hero you can play aggressively, especially during the early and mid game. Sometimes, the best play is simply staying hidden and letting the enemy make the first mistake. The more patient you are, the more effective Minsitthar becomes. Because as I always remind, make every decision based on the information you see in the minimap. Here, we can see Paquito, but we still have no vision of the rest of his teammates, especially Johnson. Until we know where they are, there's no reason to reveal ourselves, because Minsitthar is the kind of hero that relies on surprise. You don't want the enemy to know where you are before you engage. But here, we were so focused on targeting Alucard that we completely ignored Eudora. And just like that, our setup got interrupted. Sometimes, the heroes you tend to ignore are the ones that end up causing the biggest problems. See, their Eudora was actually one of the key reasons they won this Lord fight. She even secured the Lord and took down our Roger. Meanwhile, their Nathan is just doing free hits the whole time, and yes, they almost wiped us out here. So at this point, the enemy team is clearly in control. But don't forget, Minsitthar is one of the best heroes at punishing enemies who overextend. Although yes, our top priority is to clear the minion waves and defend. But if we see an opening to catch someone out of position, we'll take it without any hesitation. Look, Selena's arrow connected with Paquito, but she can't dive in carelessly because Eudora is right beside him, ready to back him up. But there's no way we're letting that arrow go to waste. I honestly enjoy playing with a good Selena player because she works so well with the king. Once she lands her arrow, it's much easier for Minsitthar to follow up and land his hook. Now, I don't know why, but a lot of players still underestimate Minsitthar just because his ultimate is on cooldown. Just like this Nathan here, he thought it was safe to chase the king. But we still stayed cautious, and we checked his items first because there had to be a reason he was this confident. And yes, it was because he was almost full build at this point. But stay relaxed and composed. Make it look like you're backing off, and once he gets close enough, that's when you punish him. Then we headed into the Lord dance, and this time, we weren't going to ignore Eudora. We even committed our flicker here, just to make sure she was instantly locked down by our king's calling, so she had no chance to escape with her own flicker. Meanwhile, our Roger was being hunted down by their Paquito, but I assume Selena's arrow connected once again at the perfect moment, saving our jungler. Now, did you know Minsitthar was actually designed for a hybrid build? And yes, that's a combination of HP-based items and physical attack items. The reason behind this lies in his passive and skills. You see, Minsithar's passive scales with his total HP, so the more HP-based items you build, the more damage it deals and the more healing you get. On the other hand, his first skill, second skill, and most importantly, his ultimate all benefit from physical attack, allowing physical items to significantly increase his damage output. That's why a hybrid build is so effective, since HP build item strengthens your passive, while physical attack items boosts your skill damage, letting you maximize both parts of Minsithar's kit. And yes, in this game, we're going with a hybrid build. Just look at how much sustain we have while still dealing a solid amount of damage. If I'm not mistaken, I already explained why hybrid build works so well on Minsitthar about a year ago. But for those of you who are new to the channel, I'm more than happy to explain it again, especially if you're still learning the king. Personally, I always recommend starting with a hybrid build because it gives you a good balance of damage and survivability. Look, we're not afraid to walk straight at the enemy and contest the Lord because this build gives us enough durability to survive even Eudora's burst damage. Then, as you get more comfortable with Minsitthar, that's when you can start adjusting your build depending on the enemy lineup and your own playstyle. And yes, unfortunately, we still got taken down here. And our Harith also did everything he could to win this Lord fight, but Eudora was already dealing so much damage at this point. So they got the Lord, but that's not a big problem because Minsitthar can easily clear and defend it. And we know Johnson is driving, but again, we're not afraid because we can survive his combo. Their Paquito also didn't go for a full damage build, so he was surprisingly tanky as well. But if they didn't have a Johnson on their team, we probably would have gone for a full damage build to burst Paquito much more easily. But because of Johnson's threat, we needed the extra survivability more than the extra damage. But even with this build, you can see that we still managed to burst down Paquito. It just took a little longer. You see, itemization is very important. Although you mostly see me using a full damage Trinity build, but in a game like this where there's a Johnson, a hybrid build gives you a much better chance of winning. Instead of getting one shot by his combo, you survive it. And once you do, that's your chance to turn the game around by making Johnson set up your own trap. And just like that, we managed to wipe them out and end the game. So without further ado, let's move on to game 2. Yes, it's still against a Paquito because this hero is still a priority pick. And as usual, just play it safe in the early and focus on reaching level 4. Once you unlock your ultimate, that's when you can start looking for a good opportunity to engage. We managed to take down Paquito here, but we also lost our jungler as well. And just when we thought we could get out, Grok got his ultimate unlocks at the perfect moment. So yes, we got taken down too. Now look, the score is 13-2, and our gold laner even wanted to surrender. I mean, just look at the bottom lane. The first outer turret was already destroyed, and we're only 4 minutes into the game. And now the enemies are also trying to shut us down in the EXP lane. But this is one thing I really love about the king. There's always a good chance you can take down at least one of them if they overcommit. Just like this. We tried our best to survive, but Jushin didn't hesitate to use her flicker. And yes, we were really so far behind that both our gold laner and our jungler had already been taken down 4 times early into the game. Meanwhile, their Granger had already snowballed and was becoming unstoppable. But while they were busy putting all their attention on the bottom lane, we took the opportunity to push and destroy their top turret. And as you can see on the minimap, their Leomord was already walking deep into our base, and my teammates kept pressing the surrender button. I mean, how were we even supposed to come back from a game like this? We were up against immortal players with a huge early game advantage, plus they really have a solid draft. But again, just stay relaxed because the king only needs one opening to turn a losing game. Also, it's very important to keep your distance to maintain the element of surprise. Then, be patient and wait for Granger to use his dash first, and that's when you strike. Because at this point, the enemy usually gets overconfident. But if you manage to trap a squishy hero like their marksman or mage inside the king's calling, all that gold lead won't really matter. So we started hunting down their Granger over and over, but they still had a massive gold advantage. So even if we managed to punish some of their mistakes, it still wasn't enough for us to take control of the game. So we always ended up staying near our base turrets, just waiting for the enemies to overextend and give us another chance to punish them. Because our game plan here was simple: play as safely as possible and avoid forcing unnecessary fights. And if we can see an isolated enemy, that's when we slowly moved in and punished him. I think this Granger was starting to underestimate us here. He's actually a really good player, but because they had such a huge lead, it felt like he got a little too confident and let his guard down most of the time. And maybe he also thought his teammates nearby could save him once he got caught inside the king's calling. And it wasn't just Granger. Even their jungler Leomord started playing without discipline, because he was already almost max level here, while most of our teammates were only around level 8 or level 9. So we can't really blame them for playing this confidently. But that confidence ended up being their biggest mistake, and we made sure to capitalize on it. And yes, playing aggressively is the best move when you have a massive gold lead, but you still have to be careful against team compositions with strong punish potential, especially if you're up against a Minsitthar. See, we're slowly taking control of the game now. We're even confident enough to invade their jungle camps. However, we missed a chance to take down their jungler there, so our best move here was to simply retreat. And yes, we still had the chance to do it, because Alpha still had his ultimate, so he can use it to escape. And if the enemies still decided to chase us, we'd have a much better chance to make an epic outplay. Because trust me, chasing a Minsitthar is a bad idea. But surprisingly, Alpha chose to fight immediately instead. So yes, sadly, there was nothing we could do because if we committed too, there was a high chance we would have gotten wiped out. So we gave up the Lord and we tried to look for opportunities to eliminate some of the enemies. That way, we'd have a much better chance of defending the Lord successfully. And I've seen a lot of comments asking whether Minsitthar really counters Paquito. Personally, I don't think there's a simple yes or no answer, because at the end of the day, it still comes down to the player. However, if we're only talking strictly about their skill sets, then yes, I do believe Minsitthar is a real counter to Paquito. His kit is designed to punish heroes that rely on dashes. But it's still not easy though. Because remember, Minsitthar is still a slow hero with very limited mobility, so you can't just pick him and expect to win. That lack of mobility is very unforgiving if you make mistakes. You need good positioning, strong game sense, and the patience to make the right decisions. Once you master those, trust me, that's when Minsitthar truly becomes a nightmare for Paquito. And here, our plan was simply to wait for the enemies to move closer and clear the wave. However, Angela used her first skill and revealed our position. So the enemies started chasing us, and we couldn't afford to get taken down here because the Lord was already approaching. And keep in mind, this was already an enhanced Lord, and our bottom inhibitor turret had already been destroyed. So this is now or never. Instead of backing off, we turned around and fought back. It was definitely a risky play, but the enemies had overextended, so we took the opportunity to punish them. And yes, we managed to take down both their marksman and mage, which gave us everything we needed to defend the Lord easily. Then we immediately went straight here in the mid lane because only Paquito and Leomord were left. And yes, the king can confidently deal with both of them. Now it looks like we're winning, but we still have to be careful. Look, our Angela was casually showing herself on the map, so we stayed close to protect her and used her as bait instead. Because more likely, an enemy is already lurking nearby, planning to take her down. And just as we expected, Leomord is here. Unfortunately for him, once he got caught inside the king's calling, there wasn't much he could do anymore. And remember what I told you earlier. Chasing a Minsitthar is almost always a bad idea, because that's exactly what he wants. The moment you start chasing him, you're already playing into his game. Also, it's very important to choose the right target, someone you can burst down quickly. And in that case, it was Jushin because she had already used both her ultimate and flicker, leaving her with no reliable way to escape. And since we couldn't reach Granger here, we grabbed their tank instead. Besides, Minsitthar deals surprisingly high damage even against tanky heroes. But we have to commend Granger here because he took the opportunity to free hit instead of backing off. I honestly expected him to be scared, since they were already surrounded with Alpha flanking from the other side. And yes, that was a really brilliant move by Granger. We let our guard down for a moment, and he made us pay for it. Meanwhile, if we look at the top lane, Leslie and Paquito were busy settling their own personal issue, and all we could do is to watch and hope our teammates will not send us back to the lobby, because our entire comeback really depends on this 1v1 match. If Leslie gets taken down, Paquito can easily end the game. Fortunately, our Leslie played very well, giving us the opening to secure the Lord. However, it wasn't as easy as it looked, because all of our inhibitor turrets were already destroyed, which meant the enemies had the advantage when it comes to map pressure. That's why we have to constantly clear the minion waves while carefully calculating on how we can contest the Lord, because if we overcommit and ignore the minion waves, we could still lose the game even after winning the team fight. But the only downside was that the enemies already knew our position and our possible entry points to land our king's calling. That's why Grok was already guarding this area. However, we stayed patient and maintained a safe distance, waiting for the right opportunity instead of forcing a risky fight. You see, if we immediately jumped in and landed a king's calling on his teammates, Grok could easily turn the situation around with a counter set using his ultimate, especially in crucial moments like this. So as the EXP laner you have to calculate this very carefully, and the best move here is to wait for Grok to use his ultimate, and don't make the mistake of going after him. Instead, your goal here is to zone out the rest of his teammates, cut off their path, and prevent them from following up. Because just like chess, sometimes, you win by controlling the squares the enemy can't enter. The same principle applies in Mobile Legends. Your greatest impact comes from controlling space. Even your mere presence becomes a threat, forcing the rest of the enemy team to either take a bad fight or leave their Grok behind. Now, their Leomord still wanted to come close and contest the Lord, but that only made things worse for them, because it gave us the chance to punish him. And yes, just like that, we managed to win the Lord dance despite being clearly at a disadvantage. This is where macro really makes a huge difference, because even in a very bad situation, just like what happened in this game, the enemy has a massive gold lead and the map advantage, but winning is still possible as long as you make the right decisions. See, if you look back earlier, our teammates had already lost hope at just the 5-minute mark of this game, but look at us now, from spamming the surrender button, to making the enemies hit that panic button. But don't celebrate too early. They still had one thing going for them, which is a really good wave clearing lineup, especially because they have Granger, so he had to disappear first. I tried to hook him, but bro just hit the cleanest sidestep of his entire career, so we really have to commend them for not giving up. Mind you, this was already a 3v5 situation, yet they still kept fighting and did everything they could to save this game. Look, they successfully cleared all the catapults, and they didn't stop there. They also tried to advance and make some trades, but we weren't backing off either. We had fought too hard to come this far. The only difference now was that we had finally caught up in gold and items, which meant we finally had enough damage to fight back, especially our Leslie. So yes, I think the enemies should have stayed patient and waited for the next Lord. To be fair, they still had a real chance of winning because both of our inhibitor turrets had already been destroyed, so technically speaking, the game was still very much even. But anyways, that was still a great game. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss our next guide. Once again, it's checkmate.